everyone. It's Delicia here and Mary back with Ameriguayas. We have a special guest. Mary, you want to introduce her?
Yes. So today, Amanda, my cousin, is joining us in conversation. Today, we're going to talk about pop culture and how Paraguay is represented in TV shows, movies we watch here in the US. So she'll be joining in on the conversation. We have these conversations all the time off camera. So she'll be joining us today. So we're excited to have you, Amanda.
Hello, friends.
Yay! If you don't remember from episode 1, we gave her a shout out. I went to Fairfield University with her, and Mary's her cousin. So excited to have her here. Okay, so one of the biggest things that we were talking about in July, Street Foods came out and on Netflix. So if you know what we're talking about, this will be familiar. If not, maybe check it out or see clips on YouTube about it. But basically, it's street foods that went to various countries in Central and South America to showcase the different foods. And one of the biggest conversations we've all had is the lack of representation, once again, of Paraguay. So that kind of spiraled into talks about why are they not represented in street foods when Paraguay has amazing street food, and only represented maybe in like movies like Leal or Triple Frontier or The Toughest Prisons, which portrays a negative view of Paraguay. So that's kind of what we started talking about.
Yeah. So like Alicia said, street foods recently came out and they highlight Argentina, Brazil, Bolivia, which was great to see because they're often underrepresented as well. And it was their indigenous people that they did highlight. And so that was great to see. And then in addition, it was Mexico. So they highlighted the countries that are mostly represented within media in the US. And so, watching that, it's sometimes it's we feel left out, and of course out of the conversations. Paraguay isn't as known as them, but they do have delicious street food, empanadas, milanesa, sopa paraguaya, beju. We can go on and on and on.
Yes.
And of course, a lot of people don't know that because they don't highlight that in shows like street food. So and then you see on the other side the representation in Inside World's Toughest Prisons, which also came out recently, I think about a week after Street Foods. And it kind of showed Paraguay's, negative views of drug trafficking and everything like that. And then um and then another movie is The Last Runway, which also talks about drug trafficking again. So yeah, it's just we want to see more positive highlights of Paraguay. Amanda, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, so I have definitely seen Paraguay portrayed poorly, I would say, in media. One of my favorite shows, NCIS, had a pretty extensive portrayal. I think it across multiple episodes, multiple seasons even, where two of the main characters of the show, who I love dearly, were kidnapped in Paraguay and the team was not able to find them. And the two main characters were essentially tortured by these Paraguayans who kidnapped them. And even when they were rescued and got back, they essentially had PTSD from their experience there. So that was pretty upsetting, but it's more so, you see representations like that, and like Mary said, you don't really see any positive representations to level that out.
Yeah.
Yeah. To add to what Amanda said, in in terms of kidnapping. Another show, Dynasty, it airs on CW, and I feel like Paraguay's always mentioned randomly in these shows. I don't know why, but it happens. And so when I was watching Dynasty, one of the characters went to Paraguay for a mission trip, and he also ends up getting kidnapped. So again, like Amanda said, just finding that balance in representing Paraguay in pop culture and in the media is hard to find. Probably one of the only ones that highlights Paraguay positively, I would say, that I've seen or come across is Anthony Bourdain's um, food critic show, Parts Unknown. And so he went to Paraguay and he talks to the people there and he gets to know the culture through food, which is awesome. And so that was one of the only times that I've seen it represented positively. And again, it would be nice to see that in, for example, street foods. And they talk a lot about how that's how they connect to their culture is through food. So I hope that Street Foods comes out with a second season and highlights Paraguay and their food.
Yes, there's the first thing I thought of when I heard of street foods was when you leave the airport and you're in Luque and you pass like this main like what is it called?
Toll booth
Yeah,
type.
toll booth, but it's like a little park area. They have all of these lomito stands, and there's just so many options that. And I was like, this is a perfect scene for street foods, and it's like the authentic people who are like their own entrepreneurs and small businesses, and they're just hustling and doing their own thing, and highlighted. And when I was in Paraguay last July, I talked to them, and I was like, I wish I was there for more time so that I could myself film them and talk to them and share their story through social media. And they were really excited to talk about their process. And it's like this whole cultural immersion that you get through talking to just one person while you wait for your food. So I would love to see that represented on the big screen and also nationally and globally. So Paraguay is represented in this way that's not just negatively through drug cartel or trafficking. I mean, that happens in Argentina, Bolivia, Brazil, Colombia. That happens in almost all Central South America. So to just pinpoint Paraguay as like the eje or the like center of that is kind of disheartening, especially when we can talk about beautiful places like Cerro de Acai, like this mountain that they created a hiking trail to now. It's like very tourist. They have like this glamping place in different sectors of the interior of Paraguay where all the like cerros and the mountains are, like the Jesuit ruins, and the Costanera de Encarnacion, which has a lot of, it's like a boardwalk now. So that would be beautiful to showcase in street foods or whatever kind of show or format could work. So we're gonna have to go on a trip one day after COVID.
We're gonna start our own documentary, but just kind of adding to what you said, when the first thing I think about when I'm driving in Paraguay is chipa.
Yes.
You have them on the streets and they're with their basket of chipa, handing out chipa to anyone who's driving, and it's kind of like a snack on your long drive to wherever you're going. And so yeah, that would definitely be nice to see. And but you know, we can start our own documentary
Yes.
when we're no longer in COVID and we can go and really, like you said, get to talk to these people and give them, you know, representation as well. So yeah, just balancing it out in the US would be awesome to see, but like you said, globally as well. And Amanda, do you have anything to add?
Just that those chiperias are my all-time favorite chipas.
Yes.
I dream about those.
They're so warm and fluffy.
They're
It's
so warm and cheesy.
They're so fresh, like right out of the oven. honestly the best chifa. That's like a mandatory stop. is this is literally street food chiperia.
Yeah, I love
Yes.
how we go from media and pop culture to food.
Food.
But hey, this is why, we're gonna start our own street foods
Yes.
documentary. But yeah, like you also said, the landscape there is beautiful, and their tourism, I feel like, is now starting to expand, and that's something that we can definitely talk about and uh, expand on in like a different episode. You mentioned a lot there that there is to see. And like you said, these shows highlight kidnapping, drug trafficking, and it's important to also know that every country has its dangers. You walk down an alley in New York City, anything can happen. Um, and especially now in this climate with gun violence in the US, US is not the safest place to be living anymore. And so then you kind of travel to Paraguay and it's seen as dangerous. And then most likely if someone sees it as dangerous through pop culture, do they want to go visit it? And that's kind of what we want to um, bring to people's attention, is to go visit it and learn about the culture. And the surrounding countries are, also have their dangers as well, but again, I feel like they're highlighted more. So you get a lot of different points of views besides just the negatives of their country. So um, that's something that we can definitely go into as well.
Yes.
Yeah, so oftentimes when I'm watching a movie or a TV show and, I'm dozing off, whatever, and then all of a sudden I hear Paraguay or this character is Paraguayan, I'm like, oh my God, they just mentioned Paraguay. And it's usually like brought up in these random moments. And some examples are, one from childhood is Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. One of the golden ticket winners, I think, fled to Paraguayan or was a Paraguayan, something like that. So when I was little, I was like, oh my God, they mentioned Paraguay. And then more recently, I was watching the movie Knives Out, and they also mention, what is her name?
Ana de Armas.
Yeah, Ana de Armas, her character. I forget her character in the movie, but they, her character is Paraguayan. And so I was like, well, this is really random too. And so, yeah, it's just like random notes to Paraguay. And it's like,
Yeah.
why? Like, what's the reason? Like, did you research like a random country and then you decided to throw it in there?
Yeah.
A random country that no one knows about.
Exactly.
Yeah, but like they're probably expecting that no one's going to know about it, so they're not going to have as much critique. And here we are on the other side as consumers, like, oh my God, yes, they're finally representing us. And then it's either in an ambiguous way with Ana de Armas, or a negative way, like we just mentioned previously, or in a random way with Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. And it's like, oh, so it's still kind of negative because they're like, oh, I fled there, and like they can hide there kind of way.
Right.
But even like Ana de Armas, casting her as a Paraguayan is so interesting because she's Hispanic or Cuban. She's Cuban.
Cuban, yeah.
And she's white, very white. So, I mean, there are, if you look at historically in Paraguay, there are a lot of German immigrants and a lot of like blonde people and very white people that are Paraguayan that were born there. So I could see why they try to make that connection. But if they're going to cast someone as a different nationality, then they should hire a Paraguayan actress.
I agree.
Because they exist.
Yeah, they exist, but I feel like they're very rare as well. You don't really see, especially in the United States, you don't really see or like know a huge Paraguayan actress. Like, I can't name one.
Yeah.
And yeah, exactly. Like, if you're gonna play a character, why don't you play someone who's actually from there, or Paraguayan-American? Yeah, I think they do mention she's Paraguayan, but I think also like another character says she's Ecuadorian. So they mentioned both, I think. I'm pretty sure. I have to rewatch it. It's been like about a year something since I watched it. But even so, she's not Ecuadorian either if they did mention her. So, or mention Ecuador. She's Cuban, and like you said, she's white. And yes, there are white people and there are Black people and in Paraguay as well. But it also goes to what we were talking about in the last episode with the Emmys and how in the Latinx community, it's still very problematic that, you know, colorism is very problematic in terms of that. And you often see, again, white representation more so than Black representation, whether they're Latino or not.
Yeah. And if you didn't catch the second episode, what we said was that there were like Twitter back and forth between actors who are white and Latino, and then saying that they weren't represented, but there were a lot of Afro Latinos who were nominated, so kind of erasing that Afro Latinidad. So that's kind of what we're speaking to if you didn't catch the other one. But if you didn't, go ahead and watch it.
Yes. Go watch. So yeah, it's kind of just like the randomness of it. And I'm trying to think if there's any other.
Oh, did we say Gilmore Girls?
Oh,
yeah. There's like a pancake house that they always go to, Al's Pancake House, and they always have different food there from different places. And one time they were like, "Oh, I think it's Paraguayan food this week," and I was like, "Oh wow!" And that wasn't a negative representation, but it was like super random.
Yeah.
There's another random one. The first ever SNL episode I watched, which I don't watch SNL, but I was like, let's turn this on and see what this is about. And within like 5 minutes of turning it on, they are talking about the Paraguayan curling team.
What?
That's really random.
Which doesn't exist, so very random. So I was like, what am I watching?
I know they can barely get funding for soccer and tennis and
right.
And they don't have it's not cold there.
Yeah, so they were kind of just like in a joking random matter, they brought it up.
Right.
Yeah, I think another one recently I was watching Doom Patrol. And one of the characters, he's a DC character, Mr. Nobody, and this is kind of again in like a negative way, I guess, but also random.
Yeah.
Well, maybe not so random to some people if they follow like DC and the villains and the characters, but to me it was random because I don't necessarily follow that. But he escapes to Paraguay for many, many years, and he's a ex-Nazi scientist or something like that. And it's really interesting. And then they go to Paraguay. I don't think it was actually filmed in Paraguay to find this bad guy. And yeah, they kind of highlight the Germans fleeing to South America after World War II, which did happen. So again, that's another conversation for another time to get into the details of that. But yeah, I thought of that as well.
Yeah, the history and all of that.
The randomness in media and pop culture and what we see when we're watching a show. And then you all of a sudden hear Paraguay. So yeah.
So we are having these conversations to kind of bring awareness. I'm sure people who identify like us, who are first gen and where it's our first time growing up in the US and our parents immigrated, we notice these things, but maybe younger generations aren't. So we want to bring awareness and highlight and hopefully motivate companies to do better.
Yes, all of what Alicia said.
Yes.